Hey everybody, it's Lindsay. I am here to celebrate Scorpio season with my dear friend and fellow Scorpio, Sam Reynolds of Oh, he's doing the sign. It is our season. We are going to be in rare form today, talking about our favorite season, Scorpio season. And the theme for this season is sweet release. Or you could say let go or be dragged. Or you could say let that shit go. That's what we're focusing on. And we are going to use the glorious Plutonian martial power of Scorpio to get some stuff out of our lives and make space for the things that really matter. And so, hey, Sam.
Hey.
So there's a lot of misconceptions about Scorpio.
Sure.
Whenever I tell people I'm a Scorpio, the first thing they think about is sex. And then they talk about jealousy, vindictive, all of those things, which I'm not confirming or denying. So what is the real deal with Scorpio? What is Scorpio's essence really about?
So I'm more traditional. So I don't deal with Pluto as the ruler for Scorpio, but I deal with Mars, which is the primary initial ruler. And ruler does give you a key to understanding the sign. So Mars is the planet that deals with defense, war, assertion. And Scorpio is what we would describe as a water sign, dealing with more of the emotions, more of the internal realms or inner realms. So when you take that combination, you're talking about Scorpio as a sign that attempts to guard, defend, fortify the emotions in a particular way.
Wait, can you say that again? Because I love that.
To guard, protect, and fortify the emotions in a particular way. And so there is a certain defensiveness to Scorpio and attempting to figure out what's happening around them. So at its best, it's an awareness. At its worst, it's paranoia, right? So, and I always say about paranoia, and this is always a good thing to keep in mind, paranoia literally means by description, like, beyond knowing, right? So there's an idea of wanting to know what's happening beyond your immediate realm. So that's one dimension about, Scorpio. So Scorpio is the vigilance about what's happening in the world around you. Because, from Libra, we go toward not just the balance in terms of day and night, but now we're dipping more toward the night. Yeah. So when we're dipping toward the longer nights, we have to have a certain awareness. So Scorpio becomes aware of that darkness, and those things that are around us that could harm us or that we can benefit from.
Something that you're saying that really clarifies a bit of how this shows up in my life, because I find that in the work that I do, I'm constantly validating and honoring emotions and kind of those darker feelings and saying, okay, we don't need to bypass this anger or this fear or this whatever it is that's coming up for us. We don't have to bypass it and try to become, this holy being that has no emotions. But in my work, it's very much about how do we dive into the darkness, into the trauma, into the pain, into the psyche, and find out what's there that is actually having a big role in our lives.
Yeah. So, I mean, in contrast, Aries is the other house that Mars keeps. People don't associate Mars with healing, but Mars does, because how did you actually clean a wound or be able to kind of get sometimes to wellness was usually having to use a Martian weapon like a sword, and sometimes to heal a leg or whatever, to heal or save someone's life, you have to cut off some part of it.
Another description that I've heard of the difference between Aries and Scorpio, these martial entities, is that Aries is more of a defense or an attack externally in the external world, and Scorpio's attack, defense, manipulation of the world is through the invisible. Because we're looking at the polarity between Scorpio and Taurus for the new moon and the full moon, how would you describe that dynamic?
And especially in relation to your theme, sweet release, right? So both of them I consider along a certain aspect of actualization. So we're talking about worldly actualization, perhaps for Taurus, in terms of appreciating the world through the senses whether that's in terms of pleasure or money or other things that money can buy that brings you pleasure, the sensual aspect of it, the sweetness of life, because that's a sign of Venus. Whereas with Scorpio, we're often focused on a self-actualization. Who am I from the inside out? So there's some way in which you want to externalize, actualize yourself. So what we're talking about with sweet release is coming back to the sweetness by virtue of the release. And what are we releasing? What do we have to surrender? Well, we don't have to surrender the world, and worldly attachments, because that is important. And nor do we have to be continually waging the war of self within oneself. We come along the middle path of walking toward self-realization without thinking no one particular thing or object can define the self.
That's a great segue into looking at the flower essences and things that we're working with this cycle, which I have here with me. And so we're working with the flower essence Exhale, which is of the metal element. And I also have this really great meditation mist that has flower essences and Florida water. But the goal of this cycle, along with some of these other goodies, is really about how do I start to let go of anything that is inessential to myself.
Sure.
Anything that is accumulated, anything that is stuck, whether that is external. So that's, okay, now maybe I'm doing a fast or a cleanse for the fall season, or maybe I'm cleaning out my house, but it's also internal. It's taking an inventory of, okay, what are the thoughts and the habits that I have that I've accumulated that are not actually a reflection of my truest self, and starting to shed those things. I think another big part of this cycle is this idea that, sometimes we're letting go by choice, and then sometimes we're adapting to the things that were removed from us without our choice. So it's that sweet release is like, how do I let go of the things that are near me that I need to kind of expel? And also, how do I come to terms with the things that I have to let go, whether I want to or not, and allow myself to find some ease and grace in that process?
Yeah, I think that's essential, especially for Scorpio. Scorpions, whether we're talking about the sun, moon, rising, or any other dimension of, the chart, has to kind of come to be in touch with something that cannot be extinguished, cannot be exterminated. And I think that can become a preoccupation for many Scorpio influenced people, thinking about what can take me out. And so there can be this attachment, again, whether that's to an actual form or to a perception of form, not realizing that there's something in you that is both formless and undefinable, that is even beyond the scale of how you're living your life or embodying it. And I think that's what Scorpio has to kind of get back in touch with, in terms of an essence, rather than focusing on all the things that become inconsequential and inessential.
I'm literally getting chills as you're saying that, because that is exactly what the metal element in Chinese medicine is about. It's about how do we dissipate form or dissolve form and come back to what is essential, what cannot be extinguished. The metal element is associated with death, as is Scorpio. The metal element is associated with the discernment that comes from being able to determine what's essential and what isn't. The example that I like to give is, composting and the apple that falls from the tree. So in the autumn season, the season of the metal element, this apple is going into the underworld. And there's this alchemical process that determines, okay, what of this apple flesh is just going to be soil, and what of this apple is going to become the seed of new life that is essential and core and can carry on the imprint of what is to become. And so both from the perspective of the metal element and also Scorpio's association with the underworld and what you're bringing to bear around discernment around what's essential, again, there's like this perfect synergy that is really exciting.
Transformation that gets rid of the bulk and goes toward the essential, and what kind of goes toward reproducing, and generating new life and energy.
this idea that death is a necessary part of life.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
That in order for life to continue, in order to move forward into, in Chinese medicine, we would say for the circle of life, for the seed to become the sprout, that there is something that must die. And the aspect of what we're going to be looking at this cycle is what must die so that I can live. Whether that means, okay, all this, I just threw out like 4 bags of, I don't even know what, this morning, but it's like, okay, I can't live fully with all of this stuff here. And the same is true in my psyche. I can't step forward into who I'm supposed to be if I have all of these faulty ideas or these negative thoughts that keep cycling through, and how do I start to expel them? And that's what the flower essence is to help us do, to really identify what are the parts that, okay, that really needs to go. Or even sometimes people, we can accumulate people and lose, especially in this world where, it's like you have 1,000 social media friends, but this ability to really tune into what's essential in a relationship and a dynamic, and really allow ourselves to let go of anything that's standing in the way.
Yeah. What people are doing as they go through each cycle is dealing with some aspect of their psyche. I always say that the story of the zodiac, one way to look at it, is the story of the zodiac during the year is the story of God becoming God, right? It's the story of how we come more in touch with our divinity. And so we have all 12 signs within us. Like, it's consciousness and directing consciousness in particular ways that allows us to grow and advance, those weaker areas or strengthen those other areas. So yeah, we have everything in us.
And now is the time.
Correct.
The idea of Kairos. So Kairos, for those who aren't familiar with it, is the counterpoint to Chronos. So Chronos is chronological time, day before night, calendar years, all of those things. But Kairos is, when is it the right moment? When is something alive? When is something lit up as an opportune moment to make something happen? With new moon manifestations, we're looking at, well, what's the Kairos for us to work on or to focus on, or like Sam said, to direct our consciousness to. And so the Kairos right now, the sun is in Scorpio, the new moon sets the seed or plants a seed for looking at the Scorpio energetic within our psyche and within our soul, whether or not we identify with Scorpio in any other astrological way, but we all have this capacity for discernment. We all have this capacity to, as Sam said, let go of the bulk and to focus and refine and to bring our gaze towards what's essential. And that sets the stage for what comes next in the journey of God becoming God. You have to let go before you can, open to receive.
But we got one more thing to discuss.
Oh, we do? What?
The Mercury retrograde.
Oh my God, yeah. So this is gonna definitely be a 2-part situation. So y'all who are watching this, don't forget to watch the next
part 2.
Part 2.